CentralValleyTalk.com.
Hi, welcome back to Take a Moment with David Dixon. I got a comment, someone who is very enthusiastic about my show, and that made me happy. And they asked if the show is going to be around or if this is going to be a one-time thing. And what I have to say to that is, I sure hope it is. I'm doing this for a few weeks. Going to see what the response is, what people's response is. So there's two things that are really contingent on what people's responses are, and I've been getting some good responses, so that makes me happy. And also sponsorship. If you have a local business or service, you're watching the show and you think that it might be a good place to advertise, and you would like to support this show, please check out the advertising tab on CentralValleyTalk.com and let them know you'd like to sponsor Take a Moment. There's very affordable advertising packages for your budget needs, and that's what's going to keep the show going on a long-term basis. So just to answer that comment and to make a little plug for myself. Talking about love, I think love is the biggest window into our society. I just got married 2.5 months ago, so maybe I have a different perspective on love than a lot of people do right now. We're still in that honeymoon phase, and I'm sure not that things aren't up and down sometimes still, even in that phase, but I find the way we interact in love fascinating. Not necessarily in a good way, but fascinating nonetheless. I looked up the Greek concept of love, and I'm talking about, and there's a bunch of different concepts of love. There's a bunch of different words they use, so they actually divide love up in different things. The one I want to talk about today, and I'm going to talk about different types of love on the show as it goes along. But the one I want to talk about today is eros. Ancient Greek, this is intimate love. In Greek mythology, it was a primordial god of sexual love and beauty. He was also worshipped as the fertility deity. His Roman counterpart is Cupid, and we know Cupid is, and it says Cupid was desire. We all know who Cupid is, the little guy flying around shooting arrows. Okay, that's the American Hallmark version of Cupid. But these are their gods of love, beauty, sexual desire. And it's interesting that intimate love, sexual desire, beauty, and desire are all under the same category. I found that interesting. And that fertility, the Eros was worshipped as the fertility deity. So it seems that the Greeks realized that without good, intimate love, out of that sprang good children and prosperous, homes. So I want to talk about the way we see love as a society. Now, I'm not saying this is you, because, this isn't really me. This isn't really me per se. And I don't think, I'm not saying this is you out there. But what I am saying is I think this is the way we see it as a society. And again, it was, like I was talking about the glue before, as we start to fill in society with the glue. And when I speak of the glue filling in society, these are a lot of the bad things. The glue is the bad stuff mostly. Some of it's Band-Aids that are kind of neutral, but most of it's the glue is the bad stuff. And as we pour the glue in society, we start to pour the glue in our own lives. So in one way or another, and me included, we've all experienced this in one way or another, and we've all let this seep into our life in one way or another. I think that society as a whole has confused love and lust too much. I think that it's because of our nature as people, and this is because we've broken, again, this all goes back to society. The breaking of society has made us fractured. Making us fractured has caused us to become individualistic. And being individualistic, obviously, it has some advantages, but individualistic can also create some very, very horrible side effects. And the biggest of those is selfishness. And we let selfishness seep into every part of our life when we become more and more and more selfish. And that's where I think what's happened to love in a lot of ways, especially romantic love. we started out optimistic. We started out, reading the fairy tales about the prince saving the princess, and they had a happily ever after, and it was true love, and all these things. And then we have our first serious relationship. Someone hurts us. Someone does something horrible. We have our heart broken. And then we get a little less idealistic. Maybe it happens again. We bring our broken baggage into the next relationship. Maybe we break somebody else because of that. And eventually, we let that selfishness seep into the way we see love, because we see other people's selfishness hurting us, and then we start becoming selfish, and we're just trying to get what we want out of love. So we become, I'm just going to get mine, and I hear people, and this is where things like one night stands come from. This is where, a lot of things, and whether you've done these, whatever, anything I'm talking about, whether you've done these things or not, don't feel like I'm judging you, or, I think it's, a lot of it's consequence of society and the way we see. We've had a flawed view of love. And so, love is meant to be a lot more selfless. I know we all say this in passing, but I don't think we really internalize it. And I think that as opposed to internalizing love being selfless, we internalize it as selfish because of what's happened to us. My someone who I knew, who I don't spend much time with anymore, we have fights about other stuff. It was interesting. He was a frat boy. He'd go around, doing this and that, having one night stands, whatever, doing his thing on the weekend. You know what I'm talking about. But it was funny. Whenever he had a serious relationship, and he had 2 girlfriends when I knew him, one of them, he was with her for 8 months, and he never slept with her at all. And the other girl, it took him months and months and months, and he was totally faithful to her. But it took them months before they were ever intimate. And I found it interesting because it was the people he actually really cared about that he couldn't be intimate with. And I started thinking about that. I was like, how does this work? You can be intimate with someone who you don't even care about, but someone who you do care about, you can't, or it's hard. And that's when I started thinking that maybe our ideas about love have been reversed internalized. And I started thinking about this more and more. At one point, they would get in, and the girlfriend he had, they'd get in fights about not being intimate. They'd break up. He'd go find a one-night stand, get back to her a week later, and I was like I'm trying to figure it out. I'm like, dude, what is going on? And what I've realized is that as a society, we take our brokenness and I'm reading this comment quick. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, actually. We take our brokenness and we transcribe it into love. And hold on, where was I going with this comment? Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. To what and I'm going to transition to what love should be and what sex should be. As a society, we see sex as a physical thing. Sex sells. You want to sell a car, you put a pretty girl in front of the car. You want to, sell this or that. You want to, whatever. Sex sells. If you're a guy, how many times you can, catch a girl as you're a player. Ooh, that's cool. And it's like a status symbol. Losing your virginity has become a rite of passage as opposed to a sacred, bond to your future spouse. I think that we've changed that when we start not being able to be intimate with each other on an emotional level, we cheat sex into a physical activity, and sex to me, and I think this is the way I wish it was understood in our society, is the physical expression of complete exposure and trust. When it's funny, we can be in a relationship, people can be in a relationship and being intimate with each other, but they wouldn't trust them as far as they can throw them because they don't really know them that well yet. And it seems weird that we can expose our bodies in a completely intimate and open way with someone who we don't trust with our emotions, who we don't trust with our feelings, who we don't trust with our deepest with our dreams and our deepest desires. I think the disconnect between body and spirit and soul is what's eroding away at us. And so, since we have this disconnect, we don't feel that our body is part of our soul. And that's why we have this brokenness, and we carry it around with us, and we hurt more people because of it. And then we become callous, we become selfish, and it becomes lust. And then it's just about lust. And so it evolves from brokenness to a disconnect between the body and soul, and then it becomes lust. And we hurt others, and we keep hurting others. And for me, like I said, I just got married, and I was fortunate enough to wait till I got married, and for us, the trust between us is just immense, and it never got broken because of anything like that, and for us, it's the expression of true love, and that's why, and true love. Okay, here's where I get to the love part, or what love should be. True love is a selfless choice. There's a point in my dating relationship with my wife that I told her I loved her. I got to a point where I was like, I love her, and it wasn't the feeling, because feelings are important, attraction's important, all these things are very important. What brings us to that person originally, what keeps us going like that. Those things are important. Attraction, this kind of charisma between, chemistry between the two of you, those are really important. But love is the one thing in a relationship that is a choice. It's the one thing in a relationship I don't think is a feeling. And love is based on trust and communication. And when I realized I loved my wife, was when I realized I could completely trust her. When I realized I completely trust her, I realized she was my best friend. And when I realized that, that's when I told her I loved her. And that's when I knew that unless something drastically changed, that I would spend the rest of my life with her. And that was over a year ago. We got married 2.5 months ago. I mean, I knew fairly early on. We spent a lot of time together when we were dating. So the quantity of time we spent together was a lot, even though it was a short period of elapsed time. But no, it's a selfish choice. And it's the only thing that is a choice in a relationship. And I think the reason why we're afraid to commit is because we're afraid of sacrifice. Okay. I know it's kind of a big thing, so I'm going to try to break that down a little bit. Selfless choice and true love put the other person in front of us. And this is why sex is all jumbled up. This is why love is all jumbled up, because we've taken lust, we've taken these other things and projected them into love, and that's all they are now in society. And people are afraid of commitment because they're afraid of sacrifice now, because they've been hurt too many times. They're afraid to sacrifice to another person. So in that, we don't want to commit, because we know if we commit, then no matter what happens, we're stuck sacrificing that person. And sacrifice is a bad connotation in our society, and it shouldn't be. In my relationship with my wife, and I hope you don't mind me using so many personal examples, honey. I'm sure you won't. In my relationship, I seek to love her, and she seeks to love me before we love each other, before we love ourselves. This is why unrequited love doesn't really work, because if you're just giving, and you're never getting back, then it doesn't work. But in today's society, we've warped that. We give so we can get back. We're like, well, I'm going to give so I can get back. And then when that doesn't work, then we just try to get ours. You know what I mean? But when it works right, my wife can love me 10 times better than I could ever love myself, because I loathe myself a lot. I mean, honestly, I think way less highly of myself than she does, and I'm sure it works vice versa. So I know that she feels that I can love her better than she can love herself too. And that's when love works. And that's how it relates to sex too. Let me just say this one last thing, and we're gonna break. That's why sex doesn't work, because if you're just trying to get yours, see, we see that in the physical expression of love. When you're just trying to get yours, it's not good. When you're trying to give to the other person,